So good morning. Good morning. Before I get started, we have several public officials here besides our state representatives and state senators who represent all of their district or even part of their district in Pulaski County. I very much appreciate you being here. But we have many other public officials here as well. And I want to thank you for taking the time. I saw Terry Hartwick move through here and sitting to my left. Thank you, Terry. And some other folks here that you'll hear from in a little bit. But this is important business. So I want to thank all the state legislators and senators who are representing Pulaski County residents for taking the time to attend this presentation. And I appreciate your willingness to learn more about the state's prison overcrowding and its impact on all of our community. Like I said in my invitation on Monday, this is a public safety issue. This is an economic development issue, much more than many of you realize. Jay Cheshire, sitting here in the front row, can tell you one of the first questions that a prospect who comes to our county and city thinking about a move here is, how big is your jail and what's the population? Public safety is on the forefront of everyone's minds who's judging us on whether or not they want to invest in us or they want to pass us by. So we have a chance to work together to take a stand against the increase in violent crime in central Arkansas specifically, but in the state of Arkansas in general. And in the process, we can make sure we adequately provide rehabilitation and resources that our inmates need. I want to introduce Mark Whitmore, Chief Counsel to the Arkansas Association of Counties, and he's going to give you a little more in-depth view of what we need the state to provide on more maximum security beds. That's easy for me to say. Mark?
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. I'm not used to getting applauded in our own building here, but thank you for your time and attention. These are important priorities to our organizations, the Association of Arkansas Counties, the County Judges Association, the Sheriff Association, and our friends with the Pulaski County. What I'd like to talk about before we do dive into the pressing need for additional state prison beds is I want to preface my remarks that we don't believe that that's the exclusive tool. It's not mutually exclusive. It's not the silver bullet. That there are other tools in the criminal justice system that are important as well. But you don't forego or forsake the idea of building a prison over these other tools. I'll give you some examples. Some things that these organizations have staunchly supported is behavioral health, mental health, drug courts, and reentry. Those are important. They also help the criminal justice system, but you don't forsake the adding a new prison over those tools. And just to help sort of illuminate this, the county judges on behavioral health, mental health, we have been the biggest advocates in that arena. The Sheriff Association, the Association of Counties as well. We advocated for the crisis stabilization units. Our state established those, and Pulaski County has one of them. Judge Hyde and Pulaski County's leadership, and it does make a difference. But I don't want to alarm you, but mental health is not the cause of the violent crime rate. People that have mental needs aren't necessarily the same population. We've also, if you'll know, we've been advocating for additional beds at the state hospital. While I've got all these legislators here, we're 49th in the number of state hospital beds per capita. Before COVID started, the Governor Hutchinson started a study of that, and Scott Bradley was on the committee that studied it, and they want to right-size the state hospital. And keep in mind that it costs about $50 million a year to operate the state hospital. So you don't want to just double the size just on a whim. You want to make sure you right-size it. So we have been pushing for more state hospital beds for, I'd say, a decade. Mental health has been an important aspect for the county judges, or Sheriff Association of Counties for over a decade. On reentry, I believe some of you would remember Ronnie Baldwin, the late director of the Arkansas Sheriff Association. he and I served along with, Fran Flander. It was 3 drug czars ago. Fran was, we all served on the reentry task force. And I remember testifying in front of the legislature that it's like Arkansas has a car, a motor vehicle, but there's a functionality that we don't have, and we didn't have reentry at the time, and it's like a vehicle, car not having brakes. And fortunately, we launched that reentry in advance of what I call the tsunami back when there was 3,000, I think it approached 3,500, and county jail back up. So, we've been on the forefront, but I'm here to tell you that we need more state prison beds. And in order to make that compelling point, I just want to make a couple quick points. Y'all have a sheet. The County Judges Association, the Sheriff's Association have jointly resolved as their leadership to adopt that resolution. Their respective groups are going to have their conferences this September, and we anticipate their membership voting for that resolution, which is calling for some changes in our criminal justice system. So please take that with you and read it. If we don't have enough copies, we can get copies. Also, there's an article that has a lot of facts that I'm going to talk about here today, but I do want to cover some of the high points. First of all, Arkansas ranks 4th in violent crime. So that figure is just not really in debate. That's something we've got to do something about. There's a company called JFA out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. They have been studying the population of our state inmate and county jail backup population for over a quarter century, for 28 years. 2021, they made an assessment, and Solomon Graves has testified this in legislative committees, that the need for prison beds in the state of Arkansas is 3,500. Now, we appreciate greatly the legislature adding 498 beds to the Calico Rock, the Brickage unit, but that's nowhere near what we need. What they really need, when they built our prison system, there was a lot of prisons that were built in South Arkansas and had general population, but they didn't build enough maximum security beds. And so some of the other facts is, in 2013, Mike Beebe, then governor, and the legislature had a majority of legislators that sought to add a new prison in 2013, but it did not get the supermajority that's necessary to pass in joint budget and to pass the budget. So the last prison that Arkansas built was in 2003, the Malvern unit. So we've literally gone 2 decades without an additional prison, and we're sitting here with the 4th highest violent crime in the United States. We're behind the curve. Another thing I would add is that during that time, and actually since 2015, our county jails have added 2,154 beds. I may have actually gone up since then. And I don't even want to know what the figure it's been since 2003. If you remember, y'all built the Pulaski County Detention Center around that time frame. Back before that time, we had cities, each had a small jail, and the county had a jail. So what's happened is the state backup is currently just below 1,900. And for those of you that want to predict what it'll become, I want to point out that the legislature, due to the fact where you've had COVID, had to add 40 state prosecutors and 40 public defenders. And why did they do that? They did it because the caseload in circuit court, where felony cases are, is several fold what it normally is. So trust me that the backup will be much greater than 1,900. 1,900 is unbearable. To add to that, we have been trying to make the point that that's just part of the iceberg. The part of the iceberg that AOC and the courts and legislature is not particularly mindful of is active warrants. I've contacted Brad Kazort, who runs ACIC. And just to give you an idea, the active warrants in 2017 was 8,406 active warrants. 2018, 11,000. 2019, 16,000. Y'all do remember COVID hit in 2020. 21,000 in 2020. 40,000 for the year, that's just for that year, active warrants that year. Those are warrants that have not been served and the person not brought into custody. From January to April this year, it's 26,000. As of yesterday, 42,000. So the amount of active warrants that we have, misdemeanor, felony, that have not been served and not been people brought into custody is actually greater than it was when you add together 217, 218, and 219. That's just year to date. So by the end of the year, we're going to have a record number of active warrants. Matter of fact, the total number of misdemeanor and active warrants total, as of today or yesterday, according to ACIC, is 165,000. So I appreciate the legislators adding 40 prosecutors and adding public defenders and recognizing that caseload has a big indicator of how many more beds you're going to need. But that's only part of the story. The active warrants, because COVID, because we weren't having jury trials or bench trials, or people weren't plea bargaining because there weren't bench trials and jury trials, basically caused this scenario in which we may see the level of 3,000 or more backed up. One thing I don't think the public is aware of, which I've been aware of because I'm in this business, there's something called the Emergency Powers Act. We talk about it in that article connected to the resolution. The Emergency Powers Act occurs when the state of Arkansas determines that the state prisons are too full or the county jails are too full. And they release convicted felons, some of them violent felons, early because they have to make room for another spot for somebody that just got convicted of a violent felony. Every year for the last decade, they've released over 2,000 convicted felons early, not because the justice system directed that they be released, but simply because we don't have enough bed space. Since we wrote that article, I conversed with a high-ranking official with community corrections or corrections. They indicated to me that they were familiar with the EPA, Emergency Powers Act, and it had been used consistently, routinely, for the last 20 years. So it's a routine for the state of Arkansas to determine that they don't have enough prison beds. And it's a routine that rather than somebody that's convicted by a jury or has a plea bargain, rather than them serving their sentence, the state of Arkansas, through its administration, releases them early, sometimes 1/5 or 1/6 of their sentence. And what happens is, and our sheriffs see this every day, these folks that don't necessarily have a mental issue, that are mean and violent, go back out after having served 1/5 or 1/6 of their sentence, and guess what they do? They recommit. So our sheriffs see it firsthand. We're telling y'all that that's why we've got the violent crime rate. It's because the state doesn't have enough state maximum security beds. And this is for violent offenders. And this has been going on for a long time. The fact that we hadn't built a prison in 20 years is the problem. Our population's grown, the crime rate's grown. Between 2010 and 2018, the violent crime increased by 1% every year. And there's this company, JFA, that makes these predictions, that has done it for 28 years. We'll send the prediction again this summer or fall, and they're going to provide the legislature a number of how many maximum security beds you need. And in the past, the legislature said, we don't have the money. Well, a lot of people think, and I think Mr. Cheshire would probably agree, that you can't afford not to. And you do have the money to build a prison because you've got a surplus. And it's very important that that function, because the impact to the victims, the impact to our society is much greater than the cost of operating the amount of prison beds you're supposed to have. So when I was a younger man, back when the mayor was first elected mayor of North Little Rock, people went to court and they served their sentence. I don't think the general public, I don't think most people in this room knew that by and large, lots of convicted felons are just serving 1/5 or 1/6 of their sentence. If the citizens became aware of that, and the excuse was that we don't have enough money to build a prison or to operate a prison, I don't think they'll find that answer acceptable. I'm just one citizen, but that'd be my opinion. I believe that's all the comments I have today, but we would ask our organizations that you support the pressing need for additional maximum security beds, that we think it's vital to our society that we can't continue this early release of felonies, particularly violent felons, that's impacting. And one thing that I think I need to touch on is the state's failure to build the state prison beds has caused our jails, which used to function for the purpose of detaining pre-adjudicated detainees and misdemeanors who have been convicted, don't function for that anymore. I don't know when, there are multiple counties in Arkansas that have not been able to hold misdemeanor prisoners that have been adjudicated guilty because we're holding so many state prisoners. And what's that done is that there's no accountability, that they're sided out. So we've got early release of convicted felons that are violent, and then we've got a misdemeanor justice system that has been abdicated. It's been disengaged because the state doesn't have enough state prison beds. And if you read the paper, pay attention to the news, or look around you, I think you'll see the impact of it. That's really all the comments I have. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mark. And again, thank you all for being here and all the folks from the community and community leaders that have chosen to be here today, because this is such a vital issue. And I just want to chime in again that this isn't about, oh, we've got to be able to lock up a lot more people and throw away the key. We're already, specifically in Pulaski County, we've quadrupled the number of after school and summer programs for our elementary age children. We've had a tremendous increase in specific programs for at-risk youth in Pulaski County. We're running a teen court program in every Pulaski County special district high school. Have one starting up, I think, this year in the Jacksonville North Pulaski system. We're introducing at-risk youth to college and the college campus, ACT prep programs. We're doing more socially in the community than ever has been done before. And you know, at point of pride, I'd like to think that Pulaski County is doing more than anyone else, that we're leading. And these are important. We don't want to cut back. We want to continue to look for ways to better sharpen those programs, make them more effective, expand them where they need to be expanded, and try and change this generation to have more opportunities to be productive members and participate in our communities as they grow older. But those programs aren't affecting the 20-year-olds that are convicting crimes today. As so many of these folks are being convicted to serve time in the penitentiary, all those things that when I was in the legislature, and there's several of you that are here, and I'm sure that this hasn't changed, but those programs to make sure that when someone was incarcerated in the penitentiary, left with at least a GED level education, that they receive drug and alcohol rehabilitation, that they receive programming and life skills, that they received assessment in job skills and training to better qualify them or prepare them to hold a job when they got out. When an individual is going to serve 1/6 of a 10-year sentence in the penitentiary, which is 20 months, and they get credit for all their time served, and oftentimes these folks are held for trial by the judges. They aren't released on bond. All that time, that 3 to 6 months that they spent in jail waiting for trial, that counts to the sentence. And then after conviction, typically it's 3.5 months is how long that convicted felon sits in the county jail. So those 6 months or so count against that 20 months. So now that individual, because of the overcrowding and the push through the system, has only got 12 months to go through those programs and aren't fully developed, aren't fully effective, and aren't doing the job they're supposed to be. So it's a matter of how many beds we need just to handle what we have in the system today. Once we capture them, we have that responsibility to effectively rehabilitate those folks and put them back into society as productive members. And for them to be treated with integrity and respect as they go through it. These are human beings. We're not doing that today. They're passed through the system. Anyone who would like to have a tour of the county jail, I'll be glad to take you through. And our sheriff's working very hard, doing a very good job, best that he can given the situation he has. But if you can walk through that jail with me and leave feeling like, well, we're treating those people like humans and we're treating them with respect and they're getting the services and the support and the rehabilitative practices that we believe are necessary, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if one of you would draw that conclusion. So let me close for us, and then we'll answer any questions that y'all may have. And you may ponder this and want to contact me later. Hopefully each one of you has my personal cell phone, and I'm always available to talk. I'm always available to meet. I'm a big coffee guy. I probably meet over at Muggs Cafe in Argenta on county business as much as I meet in my office. So please feel free, but there is nothing more important to the county judge, to your county judge, and I hope to each one of you, than public safety. If there's any one thing that we owe the citizens of Pulaski County and the citizens of Arkansas, is to be able to send our kids to school or have a family outing down at the park or a cookout at the lake, and to feel like our family is going to be safe. That's essential. That's basic. You know, all the economic development, all the other neat stuff and pretty bridges and lit bridges and those things are secondary to the safety of our citizens. And I hope that as you prepare for this session and prepare for the budget portion of the session, that while we have $1.6 billion in carry forward funds, that we'll have serious conversation and look for serious support in meeting what the needs of our justice system are. So thank you, and I want to add with declaration of the Emergency Powers Act, felons, including violent offenders, are being released early after serving as little as 1/6 of a sentence. And if that inmate is released early after serving as little as 1/6 of their time, does the inmate, as I've said before, have enough rehabilitation to avoid committing a violent crime again? And if violent offenders in Arkansas are serving only a fraction of their sentences, have we thought about how that's impacting the victims and the public, the ones we're supposed to protect? I'll let you answer that question. So let's make sure that when violent crimes committed, the state has enough resources to ensure the offender does the time effectively. Thank you again. Mark and I can answer a few questions if anyone has.